Hello guys, welcome back to Tetris. Last time we, this one. Last time we got it so that we could take a block, move it down to the bottom, and it would turn green and become part of this blob. Well, now we need to actually detect when a row has filled up, and then we want to basically erase that row and move all the other rows down on top of it. So the way that I was planning on doing that was with my special design of this blob function. And basically we need to define a function. Let's see. We'll say check, we need to find a function, and we're going to call it, I guess, check blob rows. And that's not going to take any arguments because it's self-contained. Okay, and then what we would do is basically we'll need to loop over all the rows. So for I equals 0, I less than self blob I self dot rows self dot rows I plus plus. Then we should be able to do basically an if self blob I length, because we're counting how many x coordinates do we have in there. If the length is greater than or equal to the self rows I columns length. So if there's more or equal items in there than, or more or equal items as there are columns in that row, that means that it's full. So we will assume that it's full, and we can then do self blob I So we have check blob rows, and then I think I want to do a separate function for this, because if not, we're going to get really deep in our looping. So I think I'm going to create a self drop rows, I guess we'll call it for now. And I want to define a starting location. Where was the block that caused the, like, what was the row that caused this thing to move? Because that's what we're detecting here, right? We're detecting if one of these matches, then we will have the number of the row. So we'll say start, right? So the starting row, and so we'll define I, and we'll say for I equals start, and then I is less than self rows length. Oh, I didn't do that up here. Length. Okay, that would have been bad. Self rows length I plus plus. Then well, there's one scenario we want to handle is eventually this will loop up and we'll get up to the top, and the top one won't have an additional block to pull in. So if I equals self rows length minus 1. So if it's the one right before, no, if it is the top row. If it is the top row, then we will self blob I equals an empty array. So basically, if it's the top row, then obviously the row above it is going to be blank. So, oh, actually, there might even be a nicer trick to that. So let's go on with this. So basically, what this function is going to do is it's going to take the row above the row that it's currently at and move that into its row. So that means that if we're at row 2, it's going to take whatever's in row 3. If row 2 disappears, right, then we're going to take whatever's on row 3 and move it down to row 2. But then now there's a blank space in row 3, so we're going to take row 3 and we're going to grab whatever's in row 4 and move it down to row 3. Then we're going to grab whatever's in row 5 and move it down to 4. 6 to 5, 7 to 6, 8 to 7. You see the pattern. It starts like dropping down the blocks. So basically that's exactly what we're doing. So self blob, and we're going to grab the blob, the row of the blob, so this would be row 2, right? Equals self blob I plus 1. So we're going to get the one above it. So that's really all that this is. Now the one thing that I wanted to do was this is going to cause a problem with the index out of or bounds out of the bounds index bounds, I don't know. I'm going to be outside of the bounds of the array if I try to just allow that to pass through. So we do need this, and basically this is if I is equal to basically the top row, then set that blob equal to an empty array. So just refresh it with a blank one. Okay, so that's the drop rows function. So then we want to self.blob I if that and that, then basically we want to do self drop rows I. Pretty simple. So this needs to go into our engine. So we need to board check blob rows, and then we're going to draw it. So we're going to clear it, we're going to check the blob rows, then we're going to draw it, then we're going to move on. Okay, so does it work? I don't know. Give it a shot. So if we move this block down, confirm that it turns green, bring another block onto the playing field, bring another block, and one final block, and it's probably going to happen quite immediately instead of like some nice animation. So here we go. Oh, and it just disappears. Makes everything disappear. And we're getting all sorts of errors. Cannot read property length of undefined. Self.blob I.length. So blob I doesn't exist anymore? It should. Alright, so we are going to refresh this. Oh, and that's going to be impossible to play. Okay, how do we do this? How do we do this? So what's going on here? So we have for each of the rows, if self.blob I dot length. So blob I was undefined at some point for whatever reason. How advanced can I get with these breakpoints? Add a conditional breakpoint. Will stop only if this expression is true. Blob I equals undefined. Okay, so now we can basically run the application, thankfully. And this now became true. And what we can do is check the value of I is 19. Self.blob 19 is undefined. Why? I have 0 through 18, but I don't have 19. Was it never defined? Alright, I'm going to remove that breakpoint. We're going to continue on. It's going to error out like crazy. And basically, all I did was refresh the page. So what I want to see... actually, let me... Oh, I got to get my breakpoint set up before I do it. So what I want to do is... Remember, there's that right... Where do we do it? Here. And I want to see if we actually hit the 20th one or the 19th. See if it even gets created. Yeah, it's getting created. Okay. So we'll say board blob. We do have an array 19. So when does this occur? This is a tough one. You know, I don't gotta figure out when does what's wrong in our logic? Something's removing that 19th row. Or that 19th item. You know, I wonder if it's in the drop. I wonder if everything works fine until the drop stuff. So we'll refresh, and I want the drop rows, which shouldn't fire immediately. Yeah, no. Okay. And sadly, you know, testing this stuff can be a lot of, you know, this. Having to get the pieces in place and play the game. why video games are extremely difficult to test. Okay, so we hit drop rows. Cool. What's our start? Is 0. Var is I, or I is undefined. So we've got I of 0. Okay, we're gonna just see what happens. Self.blob I equals self.blob I plus 1. Then we already got an error. And they already disappeared. All we did was, we did it once. Okay, if I, oh. Huh. So I equals 19. Yeah, this is what happens. This is some of the bugs you get when you don't use a double equals. Okay, or a triple equals even. So I need to go back to board and set this to an actual comparison. Now we'll refresh the page. And I'm just going to try it because I think it'll work. Nope. Another issue. Oh. And again, right away, or no, well, we called, okay, yeah, we called clear, and we're going to be calling draw. We haven't called draw yet, okay, in the engine. So self rows length, so I equals 0, self.blob I equals empty row, okay. So if I equals self.rows.length, let's check that out. Self rows length 20 minus 1. Okay, so if we step, that's fine. $18 and here 19, and then we say self.blob 19 equals an empty array. That seems fine. Now we drop out of the function. And then we recheck self. Let's look at some of this other stuff. Self rows I columns length. That's 10. Okay. Self blob I. It's an array of 2. Self blob I length 2. Okay. So, for whatever reason, 19 is undefined again. But I thought we did define it. We defined it here. What we could do is an auto-repairing type function, I would say, and that if any of them are ever undefined, then basically set it equal to an empty array. But with the drop rows, it should never occur. That's really strange. I'm trying to figure out why does that even occur? What causes that 19th row to become undefined? Okay, I guess we'll have to do it again because I guess I missed the point when it became undefined. So, I will create a watch expression for self blob 19, and if at any point that becomes undefined, I'll see it immediately, and we'll figure out where. Okay, so back to playing the game. Okay, here we are. So self.blob19 is in fact an array. Okay, cool. So as we step through, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, it's becoming undefined right there, apparently. So something in drop rows is causing... Okay, because this would be an else. Got it. Okay. So when we have else, okay, I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to just go with it. See if it works. Set it down. Aha! Look at that! How awesome is that? Look, look. Oh, it's like real Tetris. That is phenomenal. That is how it's done, people. Just a bunch of mathematical tricks. Ah, there we go. So, and that's just because I pressed down when there was no block defined. That's looking really good. I'm really happy with that. That makes me happy. All right, I will pick back up very soon, and I will see you guys next time.